haven't seen it on Facebook, she gave a great talk about her feelings and her experiences with regard to this issue, and she's going to share some of that and more right now. Let's welcome Vivian.
Hi, my name's Vivian. They asked me to come here today to talk about students' experiences with gun violence. So, true to my word, I did some research. I asked my friends how they feel about gun violence, and that's what's sitting right in front of you on those slips I just passed around. So when you read those are real students' words. I met them, I know them, and they were nice enough to jot some things down for me to present to you today. So now I have a question. Can you guys raise your hand if you've ever been in a lockout or lockdown drill in a school? Couple. All right, couple. So my first lockout drill happened when I was in first grade over Mountain Beaverton School District. You know, my first lockdown drill happened in sixth. Now, one thing to note is a lockout drill is a drill for when there's police activity in the area, so schools are instructed to lock their exterior doors, prevent students from traveling outside. Otherwise, schools allowed to continue on business as usual. A lockdown drill, however, is much more serious. Lockdowns are designed to protect students from an intruder inside of the school building. In a lockdown drill, windows are covered, lights are turned off, students are instructed to huddle beneath their desks, like that's going to actually do something. And talking and cell phone use is like extremely big no-nos because they don't want to call attention to students who might be hiding. So during my first lockout drill, I was more curious and afraid. I was in first grade, didn't know too much about guns. A lockout always made me wonder what the police were doing in the area. Were they like rescuing a kid like you see on TV? I never really felt threatened because lockout meant the police were between me and the threat, and it was outside my school. I knew I was inside the school, and my teacher would keep me safe because I was in first grade, right? Lockouts weren't safely because I was inside. Weren't scary because I was inside the school and the threat was outside. Lockdown drills are a whole different story, though. A lockdown drill means there's an intruder inside of the school, and it's so much scarier because the intruder is that much closer to you. And heaven forbid you choose that precise moment to use the restroom. Lockdown drills are scary because, for all you know, huddling under a desk with a textbook in front of your face, if you're lucky, is that an intruder could be right outside your classroom door, waiting to see if anyone in your classroom dares giggle or cry. In that moment, you feel devastatingly afraid and vulnerable. The Beaverton School District requires 2 lockouts and 2 lockdown drills each school year, along with 2 earthquake drills and monthly fire drills. Lockdown drills are almost always unexpected to students, and sometimes the teachers aren't expecting them either. But the biannual scheduled drills aren't the ones we're afraid of. We're most afraid of the second lockdown in the same month, or the third lockdown in the school year, the one that isn't planned or scheduled, the one caused by threats over the phone, or people who didn't check into the front office before wandering through the halls. Those are the scariest. As my brother asked me when he did his first lockdown drill upon entering middle school, what would happen if a shooter pulled the fire alarm? I didn't have an answer for him at the time, but now I do. What would happen if a shooter pulled a fire alarm? Well, Parkland would happen. And now you can see the predicament today's students are in. We're torn between wanting to be prepared in case of an emergency and also realizing that drills make us predictable targets. Which leads to the conclusion that gun violence issue cannot be solved with drills. After all, what are the odds the next shooter's right next to me doing the same exact drill I am, and therefore knowing exactly what the school's reaction will be if one day they decide to bring a gun to school? What then? Twice a year, I sit under a desk holding my friend's hand. Twice a year, I wonder if this will be the last lockdown drill I'll do. And twice a year, I think about what that phone call to my parents would sound like and how they might react to news like that. Twice every year. I think drills are problematic because they seem like a solution, when really the problem is so much larger than that. I'm 16 years old, and in my lifetime, school shootings have happened in the schools of over 150,000 kids. But the aftermath of a shooting doesn't stop at classmates. It affects teachers, parents, administrators. It affects entire communities. What I'm passing out right now is a collection of statements from students about their experiences in lockdowns and their perspectives on on the gun violence epidemic in America. These are real and genuine, from real students I personally know. While I did choose to keep them anonymous, I also chose not to filter the responses I got. The words in front of you are 100% theirs, swearing, typos, and all, because each and every one of them are as fired up as I am about the gun violence in schools. And their voices deserve to be heard in the conversation when government seems to be working so hard to silence us. When I look at these stats and the words of my fellow students, I feel frustrated. The evidence is there. School shootings are increasingly common, and yet nothing seems to change. Every week another school shooting happens, and yet every week the laws don't change. Do you know how that makes me feel as a student? I feel disappointed. I can't vote. I'm completely reliant upon my parents, teachers, coaches, and community members to protect me. Not only with their actions, but also with their votes. I'm trusting them to keep me safe. And so were all those kids, those victims of the gun violence. We were trusting them and you to keep us safe. And I'm absolutely sorry, or not actually, if this isn't what you wanted to hear, but you in America have failed us. All the generations before us have failed. The people who are supposed to be looking after us failed to pass gun laws, and as a result have failed to keep us safe. American voters have failed each and every one of the 187,000 students affected by gun violence in their schools since Columbine, and the million more who get to read about it every day on the news as they trudge to the one place in the world they're supposed to feel the safest in, wondering if today will be the last day to make that trek. So now, I dare you to look me in the eye and tell me that guns protect people, or that gun violence epidemic isn't real, or it's a mental health problem. I have never once felt protected by the knowledge of a gun nearby, and I've only and exclusively felt fearful of that weapon, designed to take away the beautiful gift of life from people and students just like me. Americans have more than 250 million guns, and at some point, someone's got to realize that's a little bit of overkill there. We've got a problem in that we as Americans refuse to give up guns when we can see how cruelly children are hurt by them. It's a truly twisted world we live in right now, isn't it? So I dare you to look me in the face and tell me that one child's life is not worth more than all of the guns in the world. I dare you. Because every time I have to sit through another lockdown drill, wondering if it will be my last, I can't help but wonder why, in a society as sophisticated and advanced as ours, we continually stand by as children are massacred right in front of our very eyes. We and our representatives refuse to make any changes whatsoever. To be honest, I expect better of the world right now. I expect adults to look out for my best interests and realize that shooting guns could be fun, but going to children's funerals isn't. And standing for 17 minutes in the grass holding hands for the students who are victims of gun violence is not worth it. I cannot put the disappointment I have in the lack of our gun regulations in our country into words. But what I can do is implore you to go out there and make changes. Stop buying guns. Stop supporting people who do. Start voting for more regulations and stop voting for congressmen funded by the NRA. My generation has been the first to deal with lockouts and lockdowns, and you can bet that as soon as we turn 18, you're going to hear about it. We'll vote them out and institute new regulations to prevent kids from living in fear as we have. Because we're not afraid to rock the boat. I'll close with the Bible verse, because we're in a church, from Ephesians 5:11. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. I'm tired of seeing story after story of school shootings. I'm tired of Congress refusing to make rules to protect me. I'm tired of living in fear, and I hope you are too. Enough is enough. It's time to change. Time to change our laws, time to change our society, and time to change ourselves. God bless.
Wow. I think I could learn a lesson of courage from you.
Yes.
Our next speaker is Diane Imel. Let's invite Diane.
Where are you going, Diane?
I'm trying to get away.
So, maybe,
I guess I'll go out.
I think, I'm sorry.
Okay, let me get over here. Okay, after that trek. And following Vivian, thank you. The issue of gun violence and gun safety is vast with many facets. In the year 2000, 18 years ago, it was reported that over 1 million Americans had become victims of gun violence, and you can rest assured that number is decidedly more today. That's more than all the Americans who died in all the battles since the Civil War. The shirt I'm wearing is from a march that was held in Portland in 2000 in support of the proposed gun safety laws. Again, that was 18 years ago, and no viable action has been taken. Today, I'm here to share my personal experience, to put a face, if you will, to a part of this terribly important issue, the drastic need for sensible gun safety. It was August 22nd, 1975. The sky was blue, the weather balmy, just perfect for summer vacation on a ranch. Our 13-and-a-half-year-old son was there on Sobeys Island visiting a young friend. Their home was very average, one father, one mother, 2 young sons. They had acreage, a barn, and a vast amount of space for exploring and riding bikes. Perfect, it would seem, for a young boy to spend part of his summer vacation. Our son had been there but a few days when my husband and I received a call. The call. Our boy had been shot and they were en route to the hospital. Our boy had been shot. Kevin died in Good Samaritan's Hospital's emergency room that day, August 22nd, 1975. Our world was turned upside down. It was just not possible that such a young, vibrant life could so senselessly be ended. With one shot, just one shot, the lives of 2 families were shattered. Why? How? One glaring flaw of which my husband and I were unaware was that the lock on the host's gun cabinet was inoperable. It had been broken for quite a while, and the best of intentions to repair it were for naught. Added to that, there were no trigger locks on any of the guns in this cabinet or in their house. The host's cavalier attitude about their negligence baffled us. Wasn't our boy's life of importance worthy enough to warrant assurance of gun safety? My plea, my fervent wish, is that situations such as this be avoided. In our case, this was not an accident, but a deliberate action on the part of the young boy my son was visiting. In either case, however, accident or deliberate, if the gun cabinet had been locked and education of their boy on gun safety carried out, this might not have occurred. But guns are not valid without their fuel, their bullets. The young boy our son was visiting had hidden the ammunition between his mattress and box spring. But without the readily available gun, who knows? My case, our case, is just one of thousands that occur each year. This must not go on. This has to be regressed, rectified. Too many debates, disputes, discussions, arguments, disagreements have already delayed actions. Let us at least take the first step and exercise our God-given right to vote. If the initiatives offered do not afford sufficient solutions, write another, but for all our sakes, take action. Perhaps we can get some resolution in place, and then the task would be making regulatory bills are passed into law but fail to be enforced. Our voices and our votes can rectify these glaring omissions and hopefully right the wrongs being committed each day. The horrendous actions and needless deaths that occur each day, latest statistics put it at 26 a day, has got to stop. You can say it will never happen to you. It just happens on the other side of town, or among the gangs, or prowler states, or by hardened criminals, or by, but don't be so sure. It can happen to you. I hold to the words, hope. Hope is God's gift to our world. And it is my fervent hope that sensible gun safety laws will indeed be realized, and above all, implemented. Your voice and your vote are vital, and please, never ever underestimate the power of your vote.
Thank you, Diane, and for your years of hard work on this issue. Thank you. Our next speaker, our final speaker, is Penny Okamoto from CeaseFire Oregon, or a collaboration of cooperation. She'll tell you all about it. Let's welcome Penny.
Such a moving testimony of Vivian and Diane, thank you. I'm Penny Okamoto, I'm the Executive Director of CeaseFire Oregon, CeaseFire Oregon Education Foundation, and I'm also on the steering committee for Lived Every Voice Oregon, which was the I-Boy 3 campaign. Diane, I was the coordinator of volunteers for the Million Mom March back in the day. I have that same exact shirt, I actually have it framed now, so yeah, so we can put it out. Because that's really that's where my roots come from. So you can't see this, but I have hair on my arms going up. It just brings back so many memories. I don't remember if you remember Lisa Larson-Thurkill, who was the leader of that movement. Unfortunately, she passed away a while ago now from brain cancer. But she was my mentor and quite a leader. It just fills me with so much emotion to see you here and have all that flooding back from 18 years. So thank you. Let me grab this. Vivian, what you had to say was one of the most powerful things I've heard a student speak personally ever. It was completely 100% correct in everything that you were saying. So thank you for your courage to say that and for your eloquence. It was exceptional. Thank you. Okay, so let me see if I can get this to move. So what is CeaseFire Oregon? We've been around, we have 3 organizations actually. We have CeaseFire Oregon Education Foundation, which was founded almost 25 years ago now. It was started as a gun turn-in, and now we do education programs. You'll see on your table you have pamphlets about suicide prevention, especially among teens, and also the Ask campaign, asking safe kids about safe storage. When your child or grandchild, when someone goes somewhere to play, to vacation, to live, ask, is there a gun in the home or where the child will be? And if it is, say, you need to keep that gun locked up and unloaded while my child is there. Or the children can actually just stay or play at your own location where there aren't guns. So that's what CeaseFire Oregon has been doing for many, many years. We do more than that, but those are the two big programs, suicide prevention and safe storage. Together we have a 5-year plan to reduce gun violence by 30 to 50%. As you can see from here, 1, require higher standards of gun ownership. That means that people who have misdemeanor convictions for violent crimes should not be allowed to have firearms for a certain period of time. Let them get their lives straightened out. There's much more of this on our website. I'm not going to detail all of it. It would take too long. To enhance accountability of federally licensed firearms dealers. And actually, Senator Wyden just co-sponsored a bill like this, federal bill. I doubt it will go anywhere, but I'm so impressed and excited that he did this. This is HR 6649. You'll find that on our website under legislation. So let me put it to you this way. Everybody, probably everybody's been into a pharmacy, right? To pick up a prescription. You know? Okay, I don't know how many people have been into a gun store to buy a gun. So let's put it this way. If you go into a pharmacy and you don't have a prescription, let's say you need oxycodone, you're not going to go up to the pharmacist and say, I don't have a prescription, but I would really like some oxycodone. Can I have it? The pharmacist is going to say no. Okay? And also, if you pick up a prescription that you can have legally, that is information that's going to be reported and kept so that we have information about who is picking this up. Was this a legitimate transaction? And then also the security around pharmacies. It's pretty good. You rarely hear of pharmacies being successfully burglared. However, that's not the case for federally licensed firearms dealers. So they're called FFLs, federally licensed firearms dealers, and there are more federally licensed firearms dealers in the state of Oregon than there are Starbucks.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, we just want to make sure that they're held accountable, that they're doing what they need to do, that they're using computers to track things, so when the ATF comes through and tries to trace a gun, that the federal licensed firearms dealer can do that. We want to make sure that they are reducing the guns that are stolen, because that happens all the time. The guns are stolen out of federal licensed firearms dealers. Stolen, misplaced, whatever the case might be. So we need to step it up. I do want to say that over 80% of the federal licensed firearms dealers, in fact, the studies I've seen recently say 90% of the federal licensed firearms dealers do an excellent job at what they're supposed to do to reduce crime. And the Brady campaign, the Brady campaign from way back when, actually shows that 80% of all crime gun can be traced back to 5% of the federal licensed firearms dealers. So we need to crack down on that. And we need money for the ATF to do that as well. So that's the second one. Third is to improve safety standards for guns and gun ownership. So that means about training. In the state of Oregon, people have concealed handgun license permits. You don't even need to touch a gun to get a license to carry a concealed gun in the state of Oregon. Now, some counties make you do that. They make you have some training, but state law does not require it. You have to be 21. You have to pass a background check. You have to pay a fee, take a short course, but that's it. You don't have to show any form of aptitude, basically, or ability, I should say aptitude, but ability to shoot a gun. And that's pretty crazy. At least 250,000 people in the state of Oregon have concealed handgun licenses right now, and that means that they can carry a loaded hidden gun into every single Oregon public school K through 12, and in many in many community colleges and in some areas in the Oregon University system. And of course, they can openly carry, if they have a concealed handgun license, they can openly carry an AR-15 into the Capitol building, and some of you have probably seen that, but you can't carry a sign into the Capitol building. So that's where we're headed on this. So one of the things that we try to make people realize too is that violence is preventable. Just like Diane had said, you've got to lock up your guns. You can have a gun, you need to be responsible for it. Also, what a lot of people don't realize is that suicide is preventable. There are a lot of things that we can do to talk to people. I'm going to get to that in a little bit. So, for example, get trained to help.com, counseling access to lethal means, question, persuade, refer, that's QPR, and then also Lines for Life, 800-273-8255, or 800-273-TALK. That's Lines for Life. And that's not just for people who are considering taking their own lives, but it's also for people who are concerned, my child, my uncle, my whatever. You're concerned about somebody taking his or her own life, you can call Lines for Life and they will help and they will tell you what to do. But also call CALM. QPR also has great information on what to do to help prevent suicide. Because in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, suicide is preventable. Okay, this come up with Lift Every Voice Oregon? I'm going to backtrack here, not backtrack, I'm going to take a pause here just for a second. So I am the executive director of CeaseFire Oregon, CeaseFire Oregon Education Foundation. I'm on the board for Lift Every Voice Oregon. Excuse me, the steering committee. But people often ask me about the gun violence prevention movement in the state of Oregon. Where did it come from? Where did it start? So right now we have about 5 groups in the state of Oregon that deal with solely with gun violence prevention. And the oldest would be Brady Campaign, which would be Million Mile March became part of the Brady Campaign. I started with that. Well, actually the oldest is CeaseFire Oregon, but then the Brady Campaign, Million Mile March. And then there were no new groups really until after the Clackamas Town Center shooting. After the Clackamas Town Center shooting in December 2012, 3 days before Sandy Hook, the survivors of the Clackamas Town Center shooting formed a group called Gun Owners for Responsible Ownership, or GoFro, Gun Owners for Responsible Ownership. They formed immediately after that, talking to gun owners and having the gun owners' point of view about responsible gun ownership, safe storage. They're a great group. We work with them all the time. Immediately after that was Sandy Hook, and that's when you had the Million Mom March, Moms Demand Action. Moms Demand Action came in the early part of 2013. And then 2013, then we had, I've got them all, thanks to somebody. So we had Brady. So then after Parkland, that's when we had the next big influx of groups. That's when we had the students. Yeah, the students who came in. And I got to tell you, after 18 years of doing this, Diane, right? And Diane's been on this more than I have, longer than I have. To have these students come in, this more than a breath of fresh air, this fresh blood and this fresh life and this passion and this enthusiasm and this complete lack of fear. They don't care if they're offending legislators. They don't care because they themselves are so offended by what legislators have not done. So just, it just energizes everyone. It really does. And so why do we have so many groups in Oregon? One of the reasons, and I'm going to credit CeaseFire Oregon for this, is because CeaseFire Oregon did a lot of work to create coalitions, before 2012 and 2013 came along. We did legislation. We held back a ton of bad legislation. We have relationships with legislators. Some are great, some are not so great. Some legislators don't like us, that's fine, that's cool, we get that. But we have relationships, we have expertise, and we have knowledge. So when Sandy Hook happened, and every town came in and said, you need a coalition, we said, well, here's 30 groups, they're not part of our coalition. You need legislation, here's the legislation that we've done. We had it all ready. So that's why Oregon has moved so far just in 5 years. But it's not just because of the foundation that CeaseFire Oregon and Million Mom March and Brady Campaign. That it's not just that. Okay? When you talk about Moms Demand Action in every town, they have the money to buy the lobbyists because you've got to buy lobbyists to get things done. And one of the big things I've learned, and the saddest things I've learned, is that nothing will happen. No legislation will change. No laws will change. No legislation will pass unless legislators begin to lose their seats on the issue. Yeah. That is the painful truth. So that's why lobbyists are important. So, so every town brings in that, but they also bring in Moms Demand Action. Oh my gosh. I'm from Chicago, okay? You thought Chicago was organized? Oh my gosh, nobody organizes like Moms Demand Action. Moms Demand Action has 50,000 people in the state of Oregon alone. 50,000 supporters in the state of Oregon alone. I've said that for like a couple years now, and I still can't get over it. It's amazing. Those women are committed, and they are not happy. They are not happy. Yeah, so we get to work with them, and they are amazing. They've been amazing to work with this entire time. Gun Owners Responsible Ownership, I talked about them earlier. They're the experts on guns. What about this issue? What about that issue with guns? And how do gun owners feel? They've been incredible on this. So we work with them as well, and we are so happy now to work with the students. We can't wait to work with them again. The newest kid on the block, though, finally get around to this, is Lift Every Voice Oregon. They formed after the Parkland shooting. So I don't know if many of you know Pastor Mark Knudsen from Augustine Lutheran Church. But Pastor Knudsen and I and many other members of the clergy have been working for years to have an assault weapons ban. So he calls me up to Parkland, he's like, Penny, we gotta do this now. And I said, you can't, you're crazy, we don't have time to do an initiative petition. The deadline is July 6th, we can't put all this together, you gotta look at the courts and everything like that. It's like, no, we gotta do it. It's like, okay, you know, so I talked to my board of directors, I talked to our key supporters, and we all decided this is a moral imperative. Even if we had a very small chance of passing this, just because we were gonna run out of time, we knew it was a moral imperative. And so we did it, we went for it. We did IP 43, which would ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. We had a lot of back and forth with the NRA. They challenged things, trying to run us out of time. We did ultimately run out of time, but while we were going back and forth with the ballot measure title and things like that, we amassed in about 2 months 2,000 supporters with this action. Just 2,000 supporters that have signed up. And we trained 1,000 people to be signature gatherers. So we wouldn't have to pay to gather signatures because we couldn't afford that. But we got 1,000 people to do it. We traveled all over Oregon. It was a great time. We went down to Ashland, Bend, over to the coast. It was great. And we know that on average, for every person who signs up to gather signatures, you can get 100 signatures on average. That's kind of rule of thumb. All right? 1,000 people, add 2 extra zeros on that, we got 100,000 signatures, which would have been enough. And we know that had we had a week, we could have gathered the necessary 88,000, actually 100,000 signatures needed. So the thing that excites me about that is we've got a base that wants to do this, and Lift Every Voice Oregon is definitely moving forward on that. Normally I go over the principles of nonviolent action by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Unfortunately, we're going to have to move through this so we can take all the time. There we go. There's the Parkland shooting, February 14th, 2018. So one of the things LEGO is doing now is that we've been working already this summer, we're moving forward. We're talking about legislative action that we can take in 2019. Lift Every Voice Oregon is having a Lift Every Voice Lobby Day rally in Salem on September 25th. The legislators are having what they call legislative days, September 24th, 25th, and 26th. That's why we chose that day, because they're going to be there. So we're going to be there. And we would hope that you would join us. We're going to be educating them about the issue of assault weapons, banning future sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, and also high-capacity magazines. So that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have just going to be a lot of fun. Okay. March for Our Lives. So we've been working with them, but mostly we've just been watching what they do and taking part of that and enjoying March for Our Lives. Incredible organization, March for Our Lives, Students for Change. So many great student organizations that have started up nationally and in Oregon. I'm going to very quickly go over this because you can't see this very well. Does anybody want me to go over what an assault weapon is? Okay, you want me to talk about what an assault weapon is? Otherwise, I'll skip it. You want me to? Yes? Okay, all right. So very quickly. An assault weapon is going to be a semi-automatic gun. Fully automatic guns, like the Tommy guns and Dave's Al Capone, all you have to do is keep your, these are the basic things. For an automatic gun, fully automatic, you just have to keep your trigger, or your finger on the trigger, and the bullets will continue to eject. Semi-automatic, you have to pull the trigger every single time. Fully automatic guns are still available. People can still have them. They're highly regulated under the 1934 National Firearms Act. It's an extensive background check to go through it, and there's a tax stamp that goes with it. It's $200, which has not been changed since 1934, by the way. Also regulated under the National Firearms Act are silencers, and Donald Trump Jr. In particular supports the suppressor industries, which are what they like to call themselves, and he would like to have these deregulated. So, interestingly enough, there was going to be a hearing to deregulate silencers and some pretty other awful stuff. It's called the SHARE Act. That was going to be held October 3rd of 2017. It was canceled because of the Las Vegas massacre and hasn't been rescheduled. Unfortunately, 58 people had to pay with their lives for that to be delayed. So what we're talking about are firearms that are going to be semi-automatic. I'm just going to go here so you can take it. So you've got the shoulder stock, okay, and the shoulder stock you've got actually what they call. Thank you. Basically, it's going to be anything that makes the firearm easier to manage and easier to shoot. So the barrel shroud at the end is going to be something that someone can put their hand on and not burn their hand from the barrel. There's a flash suppressor because it makes it, when the flash comes out of the gun, it's not as easy to see. High capacity magazine right there. This one doesn't have a forward grip, but forward grips again make it easier to hold on to. Thumb stocks also make it easier to hold on to. So that's just a quick overview of some of the things that make a firearm an assault rifle. And again, because of time, I'm not really going to go into that too much more. Okay? High capacity magazine is any magazine that holds more than 10 bullets. That's industry standards. I don't give a flying fig about industry standards. I give a flying fig about the standards of not having any bullets in kids. Yes. And CeaseFire Oregon supports a limit of 5 rounds of magazine because in the state of Oregon, when you're hunting large game like elk, you're limited to 5 rounds. So we're showing more compassion to an elk than to a classroom students. So just the difference between a clip magazine, those are clips. People often talk about common ground. Oh, if you could just get together and find common ground. We have common ground. That's just a red herring for something else to talk about. We have a lot of common ground. This is from a Quinnipiac poll, and this was in February 2018, right after the Parkland shooting. And as you can see, 97% of gun owners and non-gun owners, 97% want to build a law that requires background checks on all gun sales. 97% of Americans, including gun owners. Why isn't that in effect yet? 67% of the people surveyed for this, they're not necessarily just gun owners, they're gun owners and non-gun owners. 67% support a nationwide ban on the sale of assault weapons. 83% support a mandatory waiting period for all gun purchases. 67% of American voters say it's too easy to buy a gun in the U.S. today. 59% of voters say if more people carried guns, the U.S. would be less safe. 75% says that Congress needs to do more to reduce gun violence. Stricter gun control would do more to reduce gun violence in schools, which is what 40% of the voters say. 34% say mental detectors would do more. 20% say armed teachers are the answer. When people talk about they want armed teachers, it sounds to me like they're just trying to sell them more guns. And we know that metal detectors are a real problem because if someone's coming in with intent to shoot an entire school, they have no problem with shooting up the people who are at the metal detectors. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. So I hope anyway, that's kind of in a nutshell some of the things that are happening. As we go forward into the 2019 legislative session, I can tell you that people are talking about a assault weapons ban, high capacity magazine ban, working for safe storage, raising the age of purchase from 18 to 21. I know that there will be some other bills that come up, but those are some of the things that I know that are being talked about right now. I know also that there are legislators who are interested in increasing the training required for concealed handgun licenses. But the truth of the matter is that after 18 years of doing this, what really determines the legislation is going to be a direct reflection of the most recent high-profile shooting. So that's the reality. But I do have to say, in October of 2015, right after the Umpqua shooting, we were going into the 2016 legislative session, and legislators were saying, no, we're not going to do anything, it's a short session. I said, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Oregon just faced the worst mass shooting in our history. Are you kidding me? So we did get legislators to take some action, which was great. But I have to say, I just want to wrap this up by saying what has been done. On the federal level, precious little has been done. On the state level, though, a lot has been done. We passed universal background checks for all gun sales, which was huge, huge win. Extremist protection order. Stalkers are no longer allowed to have guns. And we've also tightened up rules about not allowing people, basically closing the dating partner loopholes, what it is. So there's been huge progress in terms of legislation, but also huge progress in terms of people standing up and saying, enough is enough. So I thank you for your time, and I think there's going to be questions after that. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to have some time for some Q&A, but right before that, I want to point out all the new food that's over there. There's cheese and grapes and a little bit more of a light lunch, and I'm going to go get some, and you're welcome to join me, and then we'll start the Q&A in a couple minutes.